ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. O Sri Ramakrishna, the establisher of the eternal religion, the embodiment of all religions, the best of all incarnations, we salute thee. In the last reading, we stopped at page number 171, para 2 of this book, Ramakrishna the Great Master. Today we continue from there. Always active. In the last reading, we were discussing about Hriday. Hriday Ram was a cousin, nephew of Sri Ramakrishna. He had come in search of a job. So he is in Dakshineshwar. We had learnt about that. But about Hriday Ram, what was his personality? It is being discussed now. We read that one. Always active, this Hriday Ram had not a bit of contemplativeness in him. Therefore, Hriday's mind, like those of all worldly people, could never be free from selfish urges. The more we discuss his relationship with the Master, that is Sri Ramakrishna, since the earliest days, the more shall we see that the little contemplativeness and the selfless effort seen in his life were all to the constant company of the Master, who was an embodiment, an epitome of contemplativeness, and whom he tried to imitate sometimes in this respect. And the help of a man of action, courageous, who was reverential and averse to free thinking, that means very obedient without any thinking to any order, was very necessary for the success of the contemplative life of one who was indifferent to eating, drinking, and all other bodily efforts, and was ever thoughtful and altogether devoid of selfishness. That was Sri Ramakrishna. Was this the reason why the Divine Mother bound up a person like Hriday in a profound relationship with a Master at the time of his sadhana? Who will answer? But it is true that but for Hriday, it could not have been possible for the Master to keep his body and soul together during the period of his sadhana. Therefore, his name, that is Hriday's name, remains eternally connected with the life of Sri Ramakrishna, and he deserves our heartfelt devotion, reverence, and obeisance forever. The Master at the time of Hriday's arrival. The Master was 20 years old and a few months more when the Hriday came to Dakshineshwar. We can easily infer that his life now became easy to some extent when he got a companion in Hriday. When whatever he did from now on, bathing, walking, lying down, sitting, etc., he did with the help of Hriday. The doings of Sri Ramakrishna was always of the nature of a boy, appeared purposeless to the eyes of the ordinary people. But Hriday, far from protesting against them, approved them heartily and sympathized with them. This endeared him much to the Master. Hriday's love of the Master. Hriday himself said to us, "Many a time I felt an indescribable attraction towards the Master. Since then and always remained with him like his shadow. Even a minute's separation from him was painful to me. I bathed him, walked with him, sat with him, and lay down with him. We had to part for some time only at the time of taking our midday meals, for the master took from food from the temple stores, uncooked provisions which he cooked with his own hands. He took his food under the Panchavati, and I had the prasada in the temple. But I made all preparations for his cooking before I parted. His principle regarding food was so strict then that he felt no peace of mind, although he took food cooked by himself. He cooked his midday meal of rice, etc., himself, but like us, he took the luchi, our luchi, what you call as puri, small puris are called luchi. Luchi offered to at the night to the Divine Mother of the Universe. I noticed on many occasions that Sri Ramakrishna's eyes became filled with tears when he took luchi and heard him say sorrowfully to the Divine Mother, Mother, thou hast made me take the food of a Kaivarta. Kaivarta is Rani Rasmani. So, low caste, you have made me eat here in this temple the prasada of Mother, which is the food come from the Kaivarta. He was thinking like his father, etc., very, very orthodox Brahmin. They did not take food from anybody else other than a small group of Brahmins. So he was comparing himself to his father and he's telling, Mother, you have made me take food from a Kaivarta. The master himself also sometimes spoke to us about the events of the time. What did the master say? I felt extremely afflicted to think that I should have to take food from a Kaivarta. Even many of the poor indigent people did not come to the Kali temple of Rasmani to take their food because she was a Kaivarta. For that reason, as many people could not be procured to take the good cooked food offered to the deity, the cows were fed with it, and the rest had to be thrown into river Ganga. So this was the situation at the time. But we heard both from him and Hriday that he had not to take food cooked by himself for long. Our impression is that he did so till he took charge as a priest of the Kali temple, which he did in 2 or 3 months after the consecration of the temple. That means for 2 or 3 months, the master was cooking food for himself, Hriday was taking food from the prasada of Mother Kali. Now, Hriday could not understand certain actions of the master. Hriday knew that the master loved him dearly. There was one thing only regarding him which Hriday could by no means understand. It was this. When he went to assist his elder uncle Ramkumar, or for a little rest after his midday meal, or to witness the evening service in the temple, the master eluded him and disappeared for some time. He did not know where. Dakshineshwar is a vast place, so trees are there like jungle. So where he was going away, Hriday could not make out. He could not find him out. In spite of a great deal of searching, asked about it on his return after about a couple of hours, he did not give a clear answer. The master would not answer clearly, but only said, I was just near about this place. I had not gone away anywhere. As such times on some days, when Hriday went in search of him and found him returning from the direction of the Panchavati, he thought that he had gone there perhaps to answer his calls of nature and did not ask him further. Mathur praised the image of Shiva made by the master himself. This is another incident. This is what Hriday said. Once at the time, the master had a mind to make an image of Shiva and worship him. We have already said that sometimes he did this in his childhood at Kamarpukur. As soon as there arose that desire in his mind, he took some earth from the bed of the river Ganga, made with his own hands an image of Shiva, together with the bull, the tabor, and the trident, the instruments that Shiva carries, and began to worship him in the image. Mathur happened to come there, that is the Dakshineshwar, in some spot, maybe near the Panchavati. In course of a stroll, the Mathur came and, eager to learn which god the master was worshipping intently, approached and saw that image. Though not big, the image was beautiful. Mathur was delighted to see it. No sooner had he seen it than he felt that images so impressive, so expressive of divine nature were not available in the market. It was not an ordinary image. He then asked Hriday, out of curiosity, where have you got this image from? He thought it had been purchased from some shop, which perhaps he did not know. Who has made it? He was astonished to know from Hriday that the master knew how to make images of deities and to set broken parts of images also. He requested, that means the Mathur requested that the image might be given to him after the worship. Hriday agreed and, with the permission of the master, took the image when the worship was over and gave it to Mathur. When Mathur got the image, he looked at it minutely and, being charmed with it, sent it on to the Rani Rasmani, to have a look at it. The Rani too highly praised the maker and expressed surprise, like Mathur, when he knew that the master had made it. A short time previously, Mathur had a desire to appoint the master to do the temple duties. That desire became stronger now when he became acquainted with this new accomplishment of the master. That you can imagine such a divine figure, then only you can make an image. Image, first of all, has to be formed in the mind. The more beautiful, more perfect the imagination, equally perfect will be the image. So, when Thakur, Sri Ramakrishna, has made this image so beautiful, that means his mind is so clear about the image of Shiva. His mind, it is clear in the mind, means he is contemplating on Shiva so deeply. So all these thoughts must have come to Mathur. The master had already heard from his brother of that intention of Mathur, that he wants to make him serve in the temple, either in the Radhakanta temple or in the Kali temple, but did not give ear to it, as there was firmly fixed in his mind from childhood the idea that he would not serve anyone but God. But Sri Ramakrishna was firm. Even if he is offered to officiate as the priest for a salary, he would not accept. Not a paid priest, because he is going to become a priest, but not a paid priest. So he was highly principled in everything. The master's opinion on service in general. We are all engaged in different services. So what is the opinion of master about that? It is being explained. We heard the master express on many occasions that opinion about taking service by anyone. The master did not hold in high regard anybody who served another without being hard pressed by need. Why should you go and serve others? Unless you are hard pressed for need, you should stand on your own. Stand on your own labor, or earn honestly in your own way, not being slave to others. That was the idea. So he did not approve anybody and everybody taking service under anybody and everybody. Once, when he knew that one of his disciple, that is Swami Niranjanananda, of his boy devotees, took service, he felt much pain and was heard to say, I feel more pain to hear that he has taken service than if I had heard of his death. I would have preferred death for him than taking service under somebody else, because there was no need for this young man. He was just like a college student. So in that age, what was the necessity to go and serve somebody else? Though he was so averse of surrendering one's freedom for the sake of few chips, earning few chips. When the master met Niranjananda later and knew that he had taken service for the maintenance of his helpless old mother. Mother was a widow and he was the only child and he was just a college student like that. So he had to take service to serve his mother. He said, passing his hand, then Sri Ramakrishna was happy to hear that. Then passing his hand affectionately over the head of this young boy, said, there is no harm in that. Now we have taken service because there is a pressing need to take care of your mother. So you have taken it. So there is nothing wrong in it. You are not to blame when you have taken service for that purpose. But had you done so prompted by selfishness and needlessly, not for the sake of your mother, I could not have touched you anymore. So I say, my Niranjan has not the slightest anjan, stain in him. Why should it be? Why we should be so low as to serve others without any need? See the clear idea of Master. We must all think about it. All of us serving for a need or for just having a luxurious life, which is not necessary, which is harmful, by which we miss the real goal of life. Earning. What will you do with the earning? What is the high spiritual purpose that is served out of it? So these are all questions about our own proper life. So Sri Ramakrishna's idea on one of the aspects of our life was discussed here. Now, all the newcomers were surprised to hear those words of the Master to Nitya Niranjan, for that was his full name, and one was cheeky enough to say, Sir, you condemn service, but how can we maintain our families without taking to it? The Master replied, let him take service who likes it. Somebody wants to serve another, let him serve. I didn't say anything against it. I don't forbid all to do that. All need not obey me in this respect. I say this only to them, pointing to Niranjan and the other boy devotees, whom he is expecting to become monks of the future Ramakrishna order. Their case is different. What is the difference? The history tells us later on. All these people whom we consider as purest of the pure young people, so they became the main pillars of the Ramakrishna order later on. The Master was fashioning the lives of his boy devotees in a different manner. And he, it goes without saying, gave such advice because taking service was not consistent with the requisite spiritual attitude. They had to fulfill a great spiritual purpose in their life of establishing the Ramakrishna order, the order of monks and householders for the welfare of the world, for the regeneration of the righteousness in the world. So the leaders of that movement must be perfectly pure, free from the least tinge of selfishness. That's why he advised him like that. The Master felt hesitant to go to Mathur. When the Master knew of the intention of Mathur Babu from his brother, he tried to remain as far as possible out of Mathur's sight and avoid him. For just as he was to no respecter of persons in his observance of truth and religion with his body, mind and speech, he was always felt unwilling to pain anyone, by displaying his disregard, if there were no strong reason for it. So Sri Ramakrishna would never get into controversy or hurt anyone, even the least way. If possible, avoid the situation where you confront somebody and hurt somebody out of anger or dislike. He didn't want it. Therefore, avoid. If he meets Mathur, Mathur will ask him to take the priestly job and he has to say no. Then Mathur will, why? He will ask. Then I don't care to serve under somebody. If he says, Mathur may be hurt. Therefore, better avoid. So that was the sweet way of overcoming a difficulty. So Sri Ramakrishna took that option. Again, it was in the master's nature to esteem the merits of a person of good qualities and honor a respectable man in a simple, natural way, without any expectation of favors. If Mathur requested him persistently to accept the office of the priest in the temple, before he had himself arrived at a conclusion about it, he would have to refuse it and thus pain him. If he says no, Mathur will be pained. We clearly see that this apprehension was at the root of this action of the master, that is, avoiding Mathur's presence. Besides, Ramakrishna was then a young man of no importance, and Mathur, the Rani's right-hand man, was a very important person. Under the circumstances, it would not look well and would be regarded as boyish wantonness on his part to refuse Mathur's offer. But the more the time passed, the more pleasant did it seem to him to live at Dakshineshwar Kali temple. But he would not leave the Dakshineshwar Kali temple. Dakshineshwar Kali temple first he did not like at all. His brother also he did not want to continue there. But now he has taken a liking to Dakshineshwar Kali temple and we knew of it. This mood of his was not concealed from himself, possessed as he was of inward insight. From a series of events that took place during this time, it is clear to us that he had no objection now to live at Dakshineshwar, if he were allowed to live there without accepting the responsibility of any weighty duty, and that his mind was not anxious now to return to his birthplace, Kamarpukur. So he wanted to stay there. Now only problem was, suppose he is asked to take some burden of duty of some temple. There are three temples are there. Shiva's temple is there, then Radhakanta temple, then Kali's temple. Three big temples are there. If he is not asked to take any responsibility, he liked to stay on in Dakshineshwar. The master accepted the office of the priest. Under such circumstances, how did the master accept to become the priest? What the master apprehended came to pass one day. Mathur Babu came to the temple to pay his obeisance, saw the master at a distance and sent for him. The master was walking with Hriday and seeing Mathur at a distance was moving away from there when Mathur's servant came and said to him, Babu wants you. Babu means Mathur Babu. Babu wants you. Hriday saw the master reluctant to go to Mathur and asked him the reason. So why do you want to go? He's calling you. He said, Sri Ramakrishna said, as soon as I go there, he will ask me to remain here and take service in some temple. Hriday said, what is the harm in that one? Hriday has come in search of a job. And he surprised him. What he wanted. Master hates it. He hates it. So what is the harm in that? He says. It is only good to be appointed to work under a great man in such a place. Why are you then reluctant? The master replied, I have no mind to be tied down to service for life. I don't want to serve anyone. And that also for life. Besides, If I agree to perform the worship here, I must be responsible for the ornaments on the person of the goddess and the god. So, a lot of gold, silver, even priceless diamonds, etc., are there in the ornaments, very costly. And so, I have to be responsible. The pujari, priest, will be responsible for that. That is a difficult task. Sri Ramakrishna did not touch money in his life. So, him to take care of the gold, silver, and diamonds, it was impossible. It is a difficult task. It will not be possible for me. That is also one of the reasons I don't want to take service in any temple. But if you take that responsibility, this is something mother makes him talk, makes him announce. Whether he knew it earlier, just out of his mind, this thought comes and the words come. But if you take that responsibility and stay here, I have no objection to perform the worship. Fantastic decision. Suddenly it came into his mind, and that was the word that Hriday required. Now let us see how we proceed. It was really in search of employment that Hriday had come there. Therefore, he gladly agreed to what the master said. That is, I will take care of the ornaments, etc. The responsibility, you will do only puja. So, Hriday was very happy. The master then went to Mathur. Now, Mathur had no hesitation. If he asked me to do worship, he will say, if Hriday takes care of the ornaments, etc., I am ready. So, he had no hesitancy. And requested by him to take service in the temple, he expressed his conditional assent. Conditional assent is that somebody else must take care of the ornaments. Mathur agreed. He appointed the master to dress the image of the Kali temple from that day and asked Hriday to assist him and Ramkumar. Ramkumar became free from anxiety to a great extent to see his brother agreeing to do that duty at the request of Mathur. The image of Govinda broke. Another so important event that took place. The image of the Govinda, so it got broken. Let us see how it happened. All the events mentioned before came to pass within 3 months after the temple was consecrated. It was the end of AD 1855. The ceremonies in connection with it, the 8th lunar day, the birthday of Sri Krishna, had been properly performed without let or hindrance in the temple the day before. That was the day of the Nanda festival. The special midday worship of and the offering of food, etc. to Radha Govinda were over. The priest Kshetranath took Radharani to another room and put her to bed there. He came back and, while taking Govinda to put him to bed, fell down when one leg of the image broke. There arose a great commotion in the temple over that event. There arose a great commotion in the temple over that event of breaking of the leg of the image of Govinda. Opinions of various pandits were taken. The broken image is there now. What is to be done with that image? What is to be done after that image? If that image cannot be worshipped, what else afterwards? All these things brought a commotion there. The worship of the image was continued according to the master's advice. Having seen the master sometimes enter into ecstasy, Mathur became eager to seek his advice regarding the substitution of the broken image. Hriday stated that the master was in an ecstatic mood before advising Mathur and said at the end of the ecstasy that substitution was not necessary. It was not unknown to Mathur that the master could beautifully set broken parts of the images. He therefore had to set the leg of the image now at Mathur's request. He did it, Sri Ramakrishna did it so well that even now it cannot be known that the image ever got broken, even if one examines it very minutely. That image is kept there in the Dakshineshwar in another place. There they will show you in the Radhakanta temple itself, at one end of the one room, Radha Govinda is standing there. That Govinda image which Sri Ramakrishna repaired, that image is there. Every time I go, at least 3 times in a year I go, so I see that image. You cannot make out where it is broken because we have read about it, so we just think that we see something, but it is very difficult to find out. So wonderful repair work has been done by the master. After the image was broken, many people said many things about the fruitless worship of an image destitute of a limb. It was not destitute of a limb, it was just broken and was repaired also. But Rani Rasmani and Mathur Babu had firm faith in the reasonable advice of the master and did not give ear to those talks. Anyhow, the priest Kshetranath was dismissed, the main priest who caused the damage to the image, from service for carelessness, and the master was placed in charge of worship of Radha Govinda. Since then, Hriday assisted Ram Kumar in dressing the image of the Mother Kali and at the time of her worship. Hriday mentioned to us another fact about the broken image on another occasion. There is the ghat belonging to Ratan Roy, the well-known landlord of Naral, near Kuti Ghat at Baranagar, a few miles north of Calcutta. There is a temple near that ghat. The images of the 10 Mahavidyas are installed there. The images of the 10 Mahavidyas that are installed there, formerly there had been good arrangement for worship, offerings, etc. in the temple. But at the time we are speaking of, it was in a decaying condition. Sometime after, when Mathur had come to have much devotion to and reverence for the master, they both once went to see the temple. Finding the temple in straitened circumstances, the master asked Mathur to make an arrangement for a monthly supply of 2 maunds of rice and a sum of 2 rupees, to which he readily agreed. One day, while returning after paying one of his occasional visits to the temple, the master saw Jayanarayan Bandhopadhyaya, the well-known landlord of the place, standing with many people in the ghat consecrated by himself. As he was known to Jayanarayan, he went to him. Jayanarayan saluted and welcomed him respectfully and introduced him to his companions. In the course of conversation, he raised the topic of the Kali temple of Rani Rasmani and asked the master, "Sir, is Govinda of the temple broken?" The master said to him, "Oh, what a fine understanding! Can one who is an indivisible whole be broken? finding the possibility of various vain topics being raised on the question put by Jainarayan, the master then changed the course of the talk. Introducing another topic, he advised him to give up unessential parts of everything and accept the essentials only. The intelligent Jainarayan also took that hint from the master and refrained from putting such vain questions. This breaking of the image has taken place in many important temples also. Govindji's temple also of Vrindavan. So the image was taken away to Jaipur, and only the temple was empty without image. Then the priests were very unhappy. Then the God himself appeared to them and told them, they have taken away the image only, but I am here, you don't worry. You install another image and continue. So that is how the temple of Govindji's temple in Vrindavan functioning. God himself told the image has gone away, but I am here, I am not gone. So you do my worship. So these things have taken. That's why the master advised, don't worry about the inessentials of things. Essential thing only you discuss. Otherwise, which image broke, when, who repaired it, all sorts of useless discussions will continue. We have heard from Hriday that the worship by the master was an act worth witnessing. Whosoever saw it became charmed. Oh, the songs sung by the master in his sweet voice, with his heart swelling with emotions. Whoever heard those songs could never forget them. There was in them something wonderful, divine, and nothing of the artificiality of the so-called masters of high-class music. Their only merits, that is the professional musicians' merits, were the complete identification. The masters of the high class, their only merits were the complete identification of himself with the emotion of the songs, in an accurate expression of the same, in a sweet voice, touching the heart, and the correctness of time and cadence. This was about Sri Ramakrishna's music. Whoever heard his songs became convinced that emotion was the very life of music. Again, it was very dear, very clear to anyone who heard the songs sung by the master and compared them with those sung by others, that the emotion conveyed by songs was thwarted in the case of others, because time and cadence were not accurate. Whenever Rani Rasmani came to Dakshineshwar, she sent for Sri Ramakrishna, and listened to his songs. She was particularly fond of the following song. What is thy consideration, O mother, that thou standest with thy foot on Hara's bosom? Thou hast reached out thy tongue of thine own accord, as if thou wert a very simple girl. I have understood it. O Saviour, is it that a hereditary trait? Did thy mother stand on thy father's bosom like this? So this song, Rani Rasmani, used to like being sung by Sri Ramakrishna. There was another reason why the master's songs were so sweet. He became so much absorbed in the emotion of the song at the time of singing that he forgot altogether that he was singing to please anyone. Whether there was anyone or not, he did not care at all. We have not seen in our life anyone else singing a song and becoming so absorbed in the emotion as to lose himself completely like the master. Even devotional singers expect a little at least of praise from their hearers. But it was in the case of the Master alone we saw that whenever anyone praised his songs, he actually felt that the praise was due to the emotion of the song and not at all to himself. So he was unaware of himself. He would lose himself in the song, and that left a great impression on anyone who heard, because the song was full of the emotion with which it was written to please the Lord. So the song would come out with its full expression and power and imagination, so that would impress the hearers. The Master's first vision during worship. So he used to sing during his worship, and after worship was over, he would go on singing songs after songs. So during this course, how he spiritually progressed, and the purpose for which he was singing the song or doing the worship was to have the vision of the Mother, Divine Mother in the image. So that happens now. Hriday used to say that while singing, the Master let fall copious tears. He became so much absorbed in worship that he could not know at all if anyone came or spoke near him. The Master said that at the time of performing Anganyasa, Karanyasa, etc., the different rituals during the ritual worship, he actually saw the letters of the mantras in bright colors set in his body. You see the mantras being written on his body. He actually saw the coiled power, Kundalini, going up in the form of a snake through the Sushumna to the Sahasrara. So the Sushumna is the important nerve center through which he would see the Kundalini Shakti passing to Sahasrara. So he felt that the parts of his body left behind by that power at once became still and insensitive and dead to all appearance. Again, when according to the prescribed method of worship, he uttered the mantra Rang, sprinkled water all around himself, and imagined a wall of fire existing around the place of worship. He actually saw an impassable wall of fire with hundreds of tongues spread out, protecting the place of worship from all obstacles. Hriday said that other Brahmins, seeing his mind quite absorbed and body shining all over with a resplendent luster, said to one another, "It is as if Vishnu himself has assumed a human body," and he sat down to worship. That was the impression the Master left on the people who saw him doing the ritual worship. Ritual worship is so ordinary, very difficult to impress others with a ritual worship. But Sri Ramakrishna's ritual worship itself was so much tremendously impressive on the onlookers. So he was a wonderful person by himself. Everywhere he had his own speciality. So we will continue how it proceeds like this and has a divine vision, the first vision of Mother. That vision itself is an extremely rare vision. There he sees, first of all, the Mother's form, then her formless form, again formless form to form he comes back. So it is an extraordinary vision. We shall continue in our next reading. Till then, goodbye. निरञ्जनं नित्यमनन्तरूपं भक्तानुकम्पाधृतविग्रहं वै ईशावतारं परमेशमीड्यं तं रामकृष्णं शिरसा नमामः. O Ramakrishna, the taintless, the eternal, of the infinite forms, who has assumed forms only out of compassion to the devotees, incarnation of God and the adorable Supreme Lord, we salute thee with our heads down. Jai Ram Krishna.